Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Solar Rooftop Workshop as part of Acterra's Green at Home series. We have an exciting hour ahead of us with 2 guest speakers and lots of questions from you guys. If you guys have questions along the presentation, you guys can go ahead and put it in the chat, and we'll allocate a time in the middle of the presentation at the very end to answer your guys' questions. First, I want to thank our sponsor, Peninsula Clean Energy. They help us with these workshops, and you guys are going to learn more about what they do later on in the program. So next, I want to introduce our first speaker. His name is Barry Cinnamon, and he's the CEO of Cinnamon Energy Systems, and he is a solar power advocate and expert. After Barry Cinnamon speaks, we will have Leslie Brown, who is the Director of Account Services at Peninsula Clean Energy, and she is a utility industry expert. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Barry Cinnamon. You can go ahead and share your screen, Barry.
All right, great. Thanks, Irvin. And just bear with me while I get this formatted properly. Takes a few minutes for the screens to kind of shuffle over. And let's use the slideshow. All right, it's a pleasure to be here, and we're talking about things that I'm very passionate about. I've been passionate about it since college, actually, and it's great to see that. I guess if you stay in one place long enough, the world comes around to your point of view, and the world certainly has come around to the point of view of clean energy, wind, solar, energy storage. We didn't even think about then, but that's where we're at. So just a little bit of perspective here, and this is kind of a scary slide. It's scary to me too, because when I kind of look at the average energy costs for homeowners in California over the last 20 years, we're going from in the year 2000, where the combined electricity and methane costs, and I'm using the term methane instead of natural gas because natural gas is not really that natural, and let's just call it what it is, which is methane. But average homes in California, based on the electric and methane rates in 2000, they were spending about $2,500 a year on energy. And over the period from 2000 to 2015, electricity costs in California, these are once again averages adjusted for homes, not all ratepayers, which would include apartment buildings. But the rates went up by about 3% a year from 2000 to 2015. Then in 2016 to 2020, it accelerated. Electricity rates went up at 6% a year. People started really grumbling because that was bad. But the grumbling has turned into a 4-alarm fire over the last 2 years, because over the last 2 years, PG&E electric rates have gone up at 14% each year, and that's amazing. And it's not even including the effects of inflation, because these rates decisions were made before we got hit with high inflation. So if you were to kind of look at what this rate increase has been in recent history, if you look at what's happening with inflation, if you look at the investments that utilities are making, which they claim is the source of this high electric rate increases, it's not surprising to assume that electricity will continue to go up at a rate of about 10% a year for the next 5 or 6 years. Maybe it'll slow down, maybe it won't, but that's kind of crazy. And when I look at the rate of increase of methane, historically over the last 5 years, it was going up at 8% a year. And once again, I'm just going to assume that it's going to continue to go up at 8% a year for the next 5 years. And that's not including inflation. And that's not including what the US is going to be doing to deliver natural gas to Europe. So buckle up for sky-high energy rates over the next 5 to 10 years. And that's going to be magnified by the fact that we're going to try and electrify everything. So putting this in perspective, it's kind of scary. I don't know how the economy is going to survive with these high rates, but homeowners can certainly take advantage of solar and community solar and clean CCA power as we're doing in San Mateo County. Okay, so going to just skip through this very quickly, but net metering is the scheme, the method by which during the day when you're generating more solar on your roof than your building or your house is using, the excess goes back to the utility and you sell it back at the retail rate, less about 5%, something called the non-bypassable charge. And that's what we're with the current net metering regime. And at night, you buy power from the grid, no problem. You're paying whatever those rates are. And it's automatic. That metering's been in effect since the mid-90s here in California. Very efficient, very kind of relatively easy to understand. But the utilities are doing everything they can to change net metering and going into implementing net metering 3, which I expect would go into effect sometime in the fall of 2022. And the utility proposal, which was accepted but not voted on and possibly is going to be modified. But they're proposing an average electricity reimbursement rate of excess solar that you generate during the day to go from about 33 cents down to a nickel, which really clobbers the benefits from solar, no surprise. They're also proposing on an average of about a $50 a month tax added to everybody who's installing solar. And they also want to reduce the grandfathering period from 20 to 15 years. So net, the transition from net metering 2 to net metering 3 will probably double or more the paybacks that customers experience. And as one could expect, the solar industry is fighting against that very hard. But this net metering change, which we expect to go into effect in the fall of 2022, and the actual next preliminary decision hasn't been announced, but it's going to go into effect sometime later this year. And anybody who's interconnecting with the utility under net metering 3 would see dramatically lower, longer paybacks compared to people who have net metering 2. So there's a little bit of a rush to get systems installed. Let's just talk about what time of use rates are and how they impact savings with solar and battery storage. So this red line, this little curve, roughly shows a home's electricity usage. People wake up in the morning in the home, you make breakfast, you turn the heat on maybe. People go to school or work during the day. There's less energy consumption in the home at that point. Family comes home from work, from school in the afternoon, then the amount of electricity used in the house goes up. So you got this curve. During COVID, it was kind of flat during the day, but this is more normal, and I expect that based on all the traffic I'm seeing on the highways, we're getting more back to this normal pattern of usage. And from the state's perspective, the biggest demand for electricity right now used to be in the middle of the day. Now it's in the late afternoon. And so you see what happens under the current net metering regime. If you're able to sell power back to the utility during the day, you can get a pretty good credit for that. Not as much as you could get a credit in the late afternoon, but you still get a pretty good credit. And then everything under this red squiggly line would be what's called self-consumption. So the utility doesn't even know about that power generation. It just looks like your house is using less electricity, but in reality, you'll be using just as much electricity. It's just coming from the sun. So under net metering 2, which is what we're under right now, when you sell that power back, you get 33 cents a kilowatt hour. But under net metering 3, when you sell that power back, you're only going to get a nickel a kilowatt hour. So dramatically less, putting aside the whole solar, $50 solar tax. And so that's the big impact that this change of net metering 3 is going to have. But let's see what happens when we add a battery to the system. I can do that by pushing this button. There we go, got a battery. If you put a battery in under net metering 2 or even under net metering 3, your battery soaks up the excess energy. So instead of sending that energy back to the grid and getting whatever credit they're offering, you store that energy in your own battery. The big advantage of that is then you have a fully charged battery when it starts getting dark, sun goes down, and that fully charged battery can pretty much power your home during the peak rates. And depending on the electricity rate you're on, those peak rates are usually from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. or from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. Obviously, except in the middle of the summer, you're not going to get a lot of sun after 4 or 5 o'clock. So the battery basically allows you to store your own energy and use that when electricity is really expensive, rather than selling power back to the utility during the day when you're not getting a great rate, and then using it again at night, buying that power at night when it's really expensive. I mean, certain rates right now are in the neighborhood of 50 cents a kilowatt hour in the evening. So big advantage. And by the way, everybody knows that if you have a battery, if there's a power failure, a public safety power shut off, for whatever reason, you can power all or part of your house with your battery. So it's very, very cool. The other big change that's happening to energy in California is the fact that we're trying to electrify everything. And it's become very apparent that this is the trend that's going to happen in California. It's not going to reverse itself. Fossil fuels will still pollute. We're not going to be able to have anything like clean coal. And these fossil fuels are going to continue to get more and more expensive. And so by electrifying, you're able to avoid natural gas use, gasoline, but it's going to have an implication because you're going to need to generate more electricity on your roof to power all these things that used to come from natural gas or methane, or used to come from gasoline. So what you can do, and we've written some software to do this, which is based on your solar system design and your home's historic energy consumption and how many miles you drive your car, we can pretty accurately determine how many more solar panels, based on the type of solar panel you want to get, you're going to need to power your car, to provide enough energy for your heat pump water heater, which is a terrific appliance that's just kind of plug and play. When your old gas hot water heater dies, you put one of these in, they're great. Heat pump HVAC system, which means that you don't need a gas furnace anymore, and an induction cooktop, which means you don't have any polluting combustion fumes in your kitchen, and you're going to have to recycle all your aluminum and Teflon pots and pans, but that's another topic. But I went through this complete transition in my house and absolutely couldn't be happier. I was recently looking at my old gas and electric bills. It used to cost me $50 or $60 a month to heat hot water using gas, methane. And my gas consumption is zero now, but the amount of solar I'm using runs more like $5 or $6 a month. So it's huge savings. I'm seeing something similar from the heat pump HVAC system. I'm not buying any natural gas, so I'm getting it all powered from electricity from the roof. And I never really measured what we're using for the induction cooktop, but the best news is my wife really likes it, and she's not complaining about her old Wolf burner. It was really hot. She's got cast iron and it works great in the kitchen. All right. The other advantage of putting in a solar system with batteries is we can do some really good monitoring, and you can really get a pretty good idea of what appliances and devices in your house are using a lot of energy and when they're using it. And you can start to change your habits gradually so that you're using even less energy, less electricity in your house. I mean, something as simple as making sure that you charge your EV always at off-peak times, or that you don't do your laundry at peak times, so things like that. I'm not going to go into the details of the slide. It's a little bit busy, but I just headlined it as information equals power. When you have granular information about what's going on in your house, you can really operate your system more efficiently and spend less money on energy. So the way solar works, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this. People are pretty familiar with it, but in a nutshell, the solar panels on the roof collect photons. They turn it into electrons, DC current, direct current. And that DC goes into an inverter, which changes the direct current into alternating current. AC power is what we use in our house and what the utilities send to us. And that AC power then goes to your appliances in your house. And then whatever excess you have then just goes backwards through the grid, and your electric meter goes backwards. So it's very simple. Solar panels also, it's funny, 20 years ago when I was starting, people were wondering where the pipe was, and you know, they were used to hot water solar panels, but now almost nobody knows what a hot water solar panel is, and kids are now educated that solar panels have wires coming down from the roof instead of these copper pipes. But current panels, they keep getting more and more efficient. They're extremely reliable, no moving parts. All manufacturers have a 25-year warranty, and as long as you pick a manufacturer that's really established, you can easily expect to see the solar panels lasting and working longer than your roof. And I've got customers from 2001 whose solar panels on the roof are still going strong. Although I have to admit that I've got a lot of these really, 15, 20-year-old customers. The systems are 15 or 20 years old. They're a little bit older. But those customers are saying, hey, I've got an EV now and I'm electrifying my house. So can you take all the stuff, old panels off, and put in the new highest efficiency solar panels? But the old stuff still works. It's really good. Installations of solar can be done on all roof types. Some roof types are a lot harder than others. If you have a composition shingle roof, pretty easy. If it's a tile roof or a flat roof, it's a little bit harder, but you find an installer who knows how to install on these types of roofs and you should have no problems. There are two basic types of inverter technology. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on this, but one topology, one design is a central inverter or a string inverter. It's like a little box the size of a small microwave, goes on a toaster, goes on the side of your wall in your garage or outside. And that box connects to wires that are connected to every single solar panel on your roof. And behind every solar panel, this one technology has optimizers. These are power optimizers. It allows the installer to monitor the performance of each panel. And if any one panel is shaded, these optimizers can compensate for that shade so that you don't lose output for the whole system. So that's one technology, very popular. Probably we do over 90% of our systems using this technology because it's a better design for battery systems. The second very popular technology are microinverters, where on the back of every panel, you have a little inverter. It's maybe the size of a big paperback book. And that inverter converts the DC from the panel right behind the panel into AC. And then you have all the AC going down into another box about the size of a microwave that combines all these circuits together. That's another good design. It gives you monitoring. It allows you to optimize all the panels. The only disadvantage is it's a little bit more expensive. And if you want to put in a battery system, because all of your inverters are on the roof and you have AC power coming down from the roof, and because a battery system has DC power, in order to convert the battery DC into usable power for your house, you're going to need a separate inverter down below your house. So microinverters, you basically need inverters on the roof and an inverter on the side of the house. Whereas with a central inverter DC optimizer design, one inverter does it all. So pluses and minuses for each, and your installer can kind of step you through those various advantages. So what's really taken off a lot over the last 5 years is backup power with batteries. And here's a picture of a couple of LG batteries with SolarEdge central string inverters in the back. And the batteries provide backup power. And as I also showed earlier in the slide, the batteries allow you to time shift your energy use. So when I'm talking about time shifting, you're able to store your excess solar that you generate during the day in your battery instead of selling it back to the utility. And then you can then use that solar generated inexpensive electricity in the battery, and you can use that when electric rates are really high in the late afternoon and evening. So you've got that advantage of saving money on your electric bill, and also obviously you have backup power if there's a blackout. Now, as far as designing these battery backup systems, you really need somebody that knows how to understand what circuits in your house you want to power and how you want to design that so that during a blackout, you don't deplete your battery very quickly, because the batteries have a capacity of 10 between 10 and 16 kilowatt hours. You can use multiple batteries. But yeah, you can imagine, even with the bigger battery, let's say it's 16 kilowatt hours, if you have an air conditioning system that's drawing 4,000 watts, that battery would be depleted in 4 hours, and you wouldn't have any juice left in the battery for, you know, your more important things like your internet or your TV or your refrigerator. So it's important to design the backup system to match what you want to run in the house, and also match your budget, because the more things you want to run, the more batteries you need, the cost of the system goes up. But it's a little confusing, but people who do a lot of batteries can figure this out pretty accurately. All right, and this is where we talk about this. This is a key part of the design that we do for customers who want batteries. Is we want to figure out what you're going to be powering, and these items that I show over here, these call them critical, and critical is relative. Like, we had one customer who, what was really critical to him is he had to have the pump in his fish tank working. Otherwise, his fish would be doing the backstroke in a 2-day blackout. And that was key. But most people want lighting and refrigeration and, you know, maybe things like phones and computer, internet, TV. So we'll kind of figure that out. And we'll do the design. Here's kind of a quick overview of the 3 or 4 most popular battery backup systems. I'm not going to get into the details, but really good batteries are made by LG. They're made by SolarEdge. They're made by Enphase. They're made by Tesla. Generac has some batteries. And I would say those companies that I just mentioned are probably 95% of the manufacturers that are really available here in the US. And most installers, you know, certainly like us, we're very conservative about battery systems. We want to make sure we're working with a big manufacturer, because you know, we have history with batteries, and we know that they're going to wear out at a certain point. You want to make sure that you've got a reputable manufacturer, and it's not, you know, kind of a cheap knockoff battery that might not last too long. But you pick batteries from major companies with good brand names and good warranties, and you'll be okay. Here's the most boring thing. It's like, how do you attach the solar panels to the roof? This is the most boring thing. And at the same time, it's probably the place where it's easiest to cut corners and reduce the cost of the system, and most likely to cause expensive problems later on. And this area is the way in which the solar racking is attached to the roof. And it's established long-term installers will use roofer recommended big flashings. They're big pieces of aluminum that slide up underneath adjacent shingles, and it's attached very securely with a long lag screw, and usually adhesive is used around the edges. That's a bunch of work to do. But you know, in order to cut costs and get installations done faster, there are a lot of companies that are using what I call micro flashings, which are tiny little flashings, really fast, really easy to put in. But if there's ever any issues, and if that lag screw, that big steel screw, is not firmly embedded in a rafter, or the rafter splits or loosens, there'll be a leak in a few years, and that can be difficult to identify and find. And I can pretty much guarantee you that the companies that are using these will probably not want to answer the phone call 2 or 3 years from now after a heavy rain. So boring, but just like any established roofer will tell you, flashings are important to protect your roof. This next graph, I'm kind of jumping ahead. I'm not going into a ton of detail of costs of systems, because it varies so much based on how many solar panels you're putting in, the type of the roof, whether or not you're using batteries. But what's useful in this graph, just starting off simply, let's just look at that blue line. And that blue line represents, on a cumulative basis, how much money you're going to be spending on electricity. And it curves up slowly. There's an 8% annual increase baked into that. I think it's going to be 10%, but we're using an 8% number. But that's just what's going to happen. Now we kind of look at what some of these other options are. the system with a battery is more expensive than the system without a battery a little bit. And then you can see other options where sometimes people are borrowing money for the battery with a loan or a PPA or a lease, and kind of gives you an idea of what the payback periods are. But at a high level, you're pretty much always looking at fairly rapid paybacks for solar only. I mean, because of the electricity rate increases, the paybacks are, in the range of 5 to 8 years. And adding a battery might increase that payback by 2 to 4 years. And people, if you're short on cash, you can almost always get to what's called positive cash flow, even if you borrow the money with a loan to install the system, because you're going to be saving much more in electricity than you will with whatever remaining electric bill you have, plus the financing costs. So in addition to the cliff that's happening with net metering 3, which is incentivizing people to put in the system this year and get it interconnected by the utility by the fall or maybe by the end of the year, there's something called the solar investment tax credit. And that investment tax credit, I actually worked really hard on getting this tax credit put in place back in 2008 when it was 30%. We got it extended for 5 more years, or maybe 10 years, I forgot. We got it extended, but then it started stepping down in 2021 from 30% to 26%.
Barry, if you can hear us, you froze for a moment. We'll give you a minute or so to see if you come back. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Ooh, looks like we lost him. All right, we'll give him a minute to see if he comes back. Everyone, if you need to get up and take a little stretch, take a moment to do that. If he's not back soon, we might switch order a little bit and move to Leslie's presentation and then do the rest of his when he returns. All right, he's not hopped right back on, so maybe we should do a slightly jarring transition, and we'll have to do another one eventually at the end. But thanks for your patience, everybody. Leslie, you want to take it away and jump into what you were going to present? And I think, oh, thank you for the updates, Jerry.
Yeah, I can jump into my side.
Sure. Just 1 second, because it seems like somebody's in contact with Barry. So in the chat, do you know if it rebooted, he might be back in a minute. So.
Yeah, not a problem.
Do you know, Jerry, if any update from him? Oh, go ahead.
It makes more sense to let Barry come back if possible. just because then we would be going back and forth.
Okay, just guessing. In that case, you can take it away, Leslie. If you're
Sure.
not sure.
Sure. I think, Irving, you were going to share the slides for me.
Yeah, go for it, Irving.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Leslie Brown. I'm with Peninsula Clean Energy. We are a community choice aggregator, CCA, sometimes also referred to as CCE, community choice energy provider for San Mateo County. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what is Peninsula Clean Energy? So we launched in 2016 to provide service for San Mateo County. We are an initiative of San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. There were ordinances passed throughout all of the cities in San Mateo County to form our agency. We are a joint powers authority. So we are a public agency procuring power on behalf of all the residents and businesses of San Mateo County. I think it's important to sort of just reference CCAs. We are actually providing generation service for most all the customers in the San Francisco Bay Area. So CCAs have had a pretty explosive growth in California over the last few years. When Peninsula Clean Energy formed, we were the 5th CCA to launch service, following Marin Clean Energy up north, Sonoma Clean Power SF, and then a small CCA that was done in Southern California, Lancaster. But in the Bay Area, we were the 4th CCA to launch. Since then, there's been CCAs that have launched throughout the San Francisco Bay Area, and we're actually covering all of the Bay Area cities, minus the few that have their own municipal electric utility, like the city of Santa Clara, city of Palo Alto, and city of Alameda. So, but what does the CCA do? We are procuring electricity on behalf of our customers. We are charging, for at least for San Mateo County and Peninsula Clean Energy, we are charging less than PG&E would otherwise be charging for that same generation service. So that's where we get this $18 million figure here for savings that we're passing directly on to customers by charging them slightly less than what PG&E would otherwise be charging. And we use that money to fund programs within San Mateo County, and actually our new service territory that we're just launching right now in the city of Los Banos, investing in decarbonization and electrification for buildings, transportation, and resiliency programs primarily. You can go to the next slide. So just a list here of some programs that we have that are supporting, electrification in our service territory. We have a UCV program, an e-bikes program that was very popular last year that is currently going through some revamp, but we're planning to relaunch that in May. We have an EV charger. This is a technical assistance program for workplace charging and larger sort of multifamily home charging, not individual EV charging at your house, but for larger banks of chargers for public access. We also have a home energy efficiency program for low-income customers, where we will go into these homes that are qualified for the program, do upgrades to the home, including some electrification upgrades for those residents at no cost to those homeowners, but really adding a lot of value into the community for those lower income households. We do have a rebate for water heaters, for heat pump water heaters. That program is operated in conjunction with the BayREN. So the BayREN manages the applications for that program. So if you are familiar with BayREN in any of their home upgrade programs they have running there, our rebate is on top of the BayREN incentives that are otherwise also being available. We're just about to launch an on-bill financing program for zero interest loans up to $10,000 for energy efficiency electrification projects. This does not include like a solar installation on your home, but it could include, like a heat pump water heater, a heat pump HVAC system, transitioning your home into other, electrification projects like installing an induction cooktop. Those types of things in the home. And then we have our Power on Peninsula program, which is a collection of resiliency programs, including one that is a solar plus storage incentive program with Sunrun. Let's go to the next slide. So just to talk a little bit about net energy metering and how that works with a CCA, because it is a little bit different when it comes down to the billing, and that's sort of want to clarify for folks here. If you have a CCA, or if you're, you live in any of the cities in the Bay Area that are not one of the municipal utility service cities, you likely are already enrolled in your local CCA, whether or not you know that or not. And when you look to install a solar system on your home and sign up for net energy metering, there are some differences in how net energy metering programs work as a bundled PG&E customer, where PG&E is providing all your services, and if you are taking service for the CCA and participating in their net energy metering program. So I'm going to talk specifically about some of the benefits for Peninsula Clean Energy, but a lot of these apply across the board in other CCAs as well. So my biggest talking point here is, I'd like to say, is we buy low and sell high. So Peninsula Clean Energy sells electricity at a 5% discount from the retail generation price that PG&E would otherwise be selling you that power. So anytime you got to pull electricity off the grid, we're going to charge you a cost that's going to be a net 5% less than what PG&E would have charged you. When you push kilowatt hours back to the grid, and you get to the end of that billing cycle and you have excess kilowatt hours that you generated during the month. We got a wrong slide here. You get an excess kilowatt hours that you generated during the month. We are going to credit you at that retail rate plus a bonus. So we give a 1 cent per kilowatt hour bonus to customers for any excess kilowatt hours that they generate during that billing cycle. If you have those extra credits, we roll those forward on a month-to-month basis. We do charge you though for the energy you use on a monthly basis. So if you are a net consumer during a billing cycle, so you're using more electricity than your solar system is generating overall for that month, we do charge you for the generation component of that electricity on a monthly basis. But if you are overall a net producer, we'll roll those credits forward to the following month. And then the best part here is if you happen to be someone who is always producing extra electricity. So if you happen to always have extra kilowatt hours that you're pushing out to the grid and you're a net producer overall, we will issue a check for that excess generation after the April billing cycle. So after the April billing cycle, if you have more than $100 in credits on your account, we will go ahead and issue you a check for that excess generation. That is different than how PG&E handles it. So PG&E handles it right now with during your true up. If you happen to have extra kilowatt hours that you generated during that true up year, they will pay you for those, but they will pay you for them at that wholesale rate. So it's called the net surplus compensation rate. It's about 4 cents per kilowatt hour right now. Peninsula Clean Energy does not recalculate that. Some of the other CCAs do have some different ways that they handle excess generation. So we definitely look with your local CCA and their programs, but in San Mateo County or the city of Los Banos, if you generate extra kilowatt hours, we do not cancel those out or recalculate them during the cash out period. Can we go to the next slide, please? And so again, this is how we operate. This is how the billing works. And how the energy tracking works for customers of a CCA. So the generation component of the electricity, so the actual power itself, it's either generated by companies that we have contracts with, or it might be generated by you, from your home on your solar system. But we maintain the relationship and the contracts for the electricity that's being generated that's going to eventually be delivered to your home by PG&E. So PG&E still maintains all of the infrastructure, the power lines, the transformers, all of the meter infrastructure at your home. They're still reading your meter at your home on a monthly basis. They're still sending you that bill. It's going to be from PG&E, but separately there's going to be an extra page and an extra line item on the bill detailing the Peninsula Clean Energy portion or your CCA. Go to the next slide, please. And then just some comparisons again about the difference between PG&E and Peninsula Clean Energy specifically. There is a monthly sort of minimum delivery fee, interconnection fee. This is under the current NEM 2.0 status. I'm not gonna go into the hypothetical NEM 3.0 because that's not on the table yet. So we're just gonna work in the NEM 2.0 world that we live in right now. But right now on a monthly basis, if you're a NEM solar customer, you pay a monthly interconnection fee to PG&E, which is about $10 a month. There is a true update, annually with PG&E, where on the annual basis, they net out your energy that you consumed or produced over the entire year. And they will either issue you a bill for all of the extra kilowatt hours that you purchased throughout the year, or they'll issue you potentially a payment or credit if you happen to be a net producer and generated extra kilowatt hours for the year. Peninsula Clean Energy, we have a monthly true-up on that generation component. So if you are regularly buying more electricity from the grid, if you're regularly using more kilowatt hours, we're going to charge you for those kilowatt hours on a monthly basis. I like that method because for folks who versus the annual true-up for everything. Because for folks who are regularly using a little bit more electricity than they're generating, instead of getting one really, really large bill at the end of the year, you can make some payments toward that energy usage throughout the year with the monthly billing. And so we also, when it comes to crediting for extra generation, we both provide retail credits for the excess generation that you produce on a monthly basis. But at the end of the year, for the purchase price for additional kilowatt hours, when you get to that annual trip with PG&E, if you have extra kilowatt hours in your bank that they're going to buy from you, they're going to buy it at the lower wholesale rate, the net surplus compensation rate, which is about 4 cents per kilowatt hour. Peninsula Clean Energy does not recalculate, or I would say sort of downgrade the value of that kilowatt hour. We maintain that retail credit for you with that bonus 1 cent per kilowatt hour on top of it. And then the cash out for Peninsula Clean Energy, you have those extra credits at the end of after the end of the April billing cycle, we will send a check to you for those extra kilowatt hours. Go to the next slide. I think that's it. Yeah, so happy to answer questions, or if Barry made it back on, we could probably go back to his presentation because I know he had some good stuff to share at the end.
Just one quick question in the chat. Someone said, you guys, the CCA also serves businesses, not just residential, right?
Yes, it's the entire service territory for San Mateo County. So it is commercial customers as well as residential customers. We just have many more residential customers than we do commercial customers.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing screen, and I think we can just switch over to Barry, and there's a lot more questions for Barry, and maybe we'll get more for Leslie. Barry, I'm gonna make you a co-host again so you can share your screen.
I'm not going to do the video just because I don't want my computer to kind of die again, but let me just get started. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So let's just get to this share. Yeah. Just bear with me as it switches over to presentation mode. And one more click so that I can see a full slide. Okay, so I think my internet died. I was just talking about the investment tax credit, which stepped down from 30% down to 26% in 2022. And it's stepping down to 22% next year. And after that, it goes to 0 for homes. There's still a 10% tax credit for businesses, but it goes down to 0. So as you can imagine, this year we're getting very, very busy towards the end of the year because people want to get the 26% rather than the 22. Next year, it's going to be even busier because the tax credit is going to go to 0. And then we have the net metering issue on top of that. So it's a little busy for us And then also dealing with all the challenges to have to get the right number of solar panels and batteries because of supply chain issues. The other really good piece of news is about the increase in the value of homes based on whether or not customers have solar. So there is a lot of good data on this, but typically the homes sell for more than the value of the solar itself. So if you're thinking about adding solar, it's one of the very few things that you can pretty much take to the bank that's going to result in a higher value for your home. The only exception to that is if you lease the system or have a PPA, a third-party ownership structure, then you don't get the extra value from having solar. But if it's something that you own, you have a loan out for it, if you pay cash, it always increases the value of your home. I talked a little bit about the supply chain constraints, and boy, it's everything's difficult these days, and it's accentuated by the fact that unfortunately our government's a little schizophrenic. On the one hand, they want to encourage clean energy. On the other hand, they put big tariffs on everything that we really need, including the solar panels, and all the racking that goes along with it. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but companies that have been in business a long time and your established installers have managed to order equipment in advance, so there's not going to be any significant delays, so systems can still get installed this year. But this solar supply chain issue, although it's affecting the residential part of the business pretty significantly, it's not devastating. But on the utility side, where they're looking at tremendous quantities of solar panels at very tight margins, it really has slowed down the utility scale side of the solar generation industry. That's about it. If you're worried about skyrocketing energy costs, solar and battery storage are good things to do, and it's this year and especially next year, absolutely the best years to do it. And this isn't just a solar installer saying, hey, this is something to do because it's personally good. I can't think of a single customer that I've had in over 20 years that was disappointed and said, gee, I shouldn't have bought that solar system. And I also can't think of a single customer that has ever said, I bought too many solar panels. And just because the system's properly installed, they just work, and they're guaranteed to put out that power for 25 years. That's it for my presentation, and sorry for the internet dropout there. Happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
So there was some questions in the chat earlier, and I can go through and try to say them out loud and see if you can answer, Barry.
Yeah, I'm kind of, yep. Which ones do you want? Why don't you just let me know and I'll try and I'll do my best to answer them.
Yeah, so Darshana said, I am concerned about the materials in current batteries that are not sustainable. What is being done about that? And why can they not have iron blanking on the other metal rechargeable, recyclable batteries like they use in New York City subways?
Well, the batteries that were most recyclable were lead acid. So, lead's kind of easy to melt down. I expect that they're going to find ways to recycle almost all of the materials that are in lithium ion batteries. And it's really a good consideration, but you kind of have to weigh that against, all right, do I want to use batteries that may not be super easy to recycle, or do I want to burn fossil fuels? And so when you're looking at that decision, obviously you're going to want to use the batteries instead of burning more fossil fuel. But I'm confident that eventually they're going to figure out ways where it's going to be cost effective to either recycle those lithium ion batteries or reuse them, possibly take an automotive battery that's past its life and use those for stationary storage inside buildings.
And Jerry had a question that if you install a battery, is PG&E going to charge you extra for having a solar battery?
Based on the current net metering and interconnection rules, there's nothing extra that you have to pay for that battery. But you will still need to get it interconnected with the utility, and the battery interconnections sometimes take a month or longer, whereas the straight solar interconnections with the utilities go very, very quickly. And I expect also in the future, you may see the utilities actually encourage the installation of a battery, because batteries will have a very significant impact on reducing late afternoon and evening power usage demands when that's when the grid is most stressed.
And then Jerry asked again, if you know what caused fires in early rooftop panels.
Yes. What caused fires in early rooftop panels were situations where the wiring wasn't done properly, or there were junction boxes on the old solar panels that were faulty. I'm not aware of any solar panels that were on residential rooftops over the past 15 years that have had problems. The ones that we had most problems, ironically, were from BP Solar, British Petroleum, but they're all very reliable. I actually have pictures of a system we installed in Connecticut, and the customer said there's a problem. It looks like a meteor hit one of the solar panels on my roof, because there was a big burnt hole in the middle of it. And it turned out that a squirrel had made a nest underneath, chewed on the two wires, shorted out the solar panel, created a small fire in the squirrel's nest, fried the squirrel. But because the system was installed properly on the right kind of roof, the fire never really went anywhere. But now with optimizers, solar panel optimizers, and with microinverters, they're all designed to automatically shut the system down within an instant if there's any kind of arc or short or fault. So the new technology is very, very safe. Zero incidents that I'm aware of, and that includes commercial systems.
And Eric had a question about the carbon footprint of the manufacturing and transporting of solar panels to our home.
You know, I guess one way of looking at it is, I'm familiar with research that has looked at the life cycle energy use with solar panels. And some people had mistakenly claimed that it costs more energy, requires more energy to make the panels and deliver them than they save. That's completely wrong. The energy payback is down around the range of 6 months. So all of the energy that goes into producing a solar panel, it generates that energy in about, less than a year. And so that energy, I mean, heck, if the systems, when we're able to get electric pickup trucks, which we have on order, we will be installing the system using electricity, and everything's going to be pretty much carbon free.
Jill had a question about if there is a company that can install solar at the same time as replacing a new roof.
Lots of companies do that. There are some companies that say they're roofers and they're also solar installers. There's companies like ours that do the solar, and we team with local roofers. So very, very common. And then one advantage to doing them together is the tax credit applies, that 26% tax credit applies to any roofing work that is necessary in the areas where the solar panels are installed. So a lot of people will say, gee, I want to put in solar, but my roof's kind of old. I need to update that roof. And they're able to use the 26% tax credit on the roof areas that the solar panels are installed on. And obviously this is a kind of a tricky accounting question that you want to make sure that's okay with your accountant, but it's very common. And that also extends to upgrading your home's electrical system. So if you need to increase your house electrical panel or electrical service from say 100 amps or 125 amps to what's more common, a 200 amp electrical service, the 26% tax credit would also apply to that electrical upgrade work.
Leanne had a question if it's possible to have one's electric vehicle battery for storage from the solar panels.
there's if you watch TV, if you watch the commercials from Ford and from other companies, they are actually advertising that potential capability. That's called vehicle to grid or vehicle to home. So yes, it will be possible. The technology is still at a very early stage that's not standardized, but I expect that in 5 to 10 years, you probably could use the battery in your car to back up your house in case of a blackout. Keep in mind, you're going to still need a bunch of electrical equipment, and you're probably still going to need solar, because if it's a cloudy day, how are you going to charge that car up the next day?
And Jerry said, "Is what kind of electric pickups are you getting?" I mean, he's in the market for an electric pickup, and I think you said the new Ford Lightning.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. I mean, Tesla was the first one that announced it. Rivian has an electric pickup. I think GM's got an electric Hummer, so I don't know what, not particularly environmentally friendly, but Ford's making a really, really big push, and it's gotten some great reviews for their Lightning pickup. And what I would suggest is, if you're interested, just go to the Ford site and put in a reservation, and you'll get it in a couple of years. And if you wait, then it's going to take 3 years to get it.
And I think we can do the last question. Marty said that he met with a solar company and they offered a federal rebate of a set amount, not a percentage of the price, and they took the rebate to drop the overall cost. Is this typical?
Did they take the rebate themselves?
And they took the rebate to drop the overall cost.
Something's a little fishy with that, candidly. The rebate, the tax credit is a tax credit that goes to the homeowner, not to the installer. But I've seen something like that happen if it was a third-party owned system. For example, if it was a lease or a PPA, and in that case, the third party gets the tax credit, and the system would be reduced, but usually not by as much as you'd experience if it was a system that was customer owned. So in that case, I just recommend getting a couple of quotes from companies that maybe are more established or are not going to do a third-party ownership structure.
All right, we are nearing time, so I just wanted to share with you guys the upcoming events that Acterra is promoting. We have May 4th, Financial Incentive Clinic, so you guys can learn more about all the rebates and incentives that are available for new or used electric vehicle buyers. We also have an EV charging workshop, May 12th. We have induction cooking classes, so if you guys have an induction stove or a small hob, we have cooking classes with a professional chef, and he can teach you guys new recipes, new techniques on the induction hobs. We also have a lecture from Kristen Sheave in 2 days from now, April 27th. These are all available at the Acterra website. Just click on the events. And I want to thank you guys for coming out today to be here and support our Green at Home series. And thank you again for Peninsula Clean Energy for supporting us. And I say good night to everyone, and thank you for coming out again.